Hello, family. Enjoy this great and beautiful moment with Afri Stories. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and comment. It means the world to us. Also, share this video with your friends and loved ones, and don't miss future videos from us. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. Lana Briggs wiped her damp forehead with the edge of her cleaning rag, a gesture that left a faint streak of polish along her temple. She sighed and crouched back down to continue scrubbing the shining marble floors of the Edevane Estate. This estate was a palace in every sense of the word. Gold-trimmed banisters, vaulted ceilings embellished with frescoes, and priceless sculptures arranged under glow of ornate chandeliers. Yet for Lana, it wasn't a palace. It was her prison. She worked long hours under the thumb of Clarice Edevane, the infamous heiress whose name graced every gossip column in the city. Clarice was as ruthless as she was beautiful. Rumor had it she fired one maid for sneezing near her mother's vintage porcelain display. Another was sent packing because she used the wrong brand of lemon-scented polish. Lana clung to her position because she had no choice. Medical bills for her ailing mother were piling high, and being fired would mean slipping into a financial free-fall. Every day, Clarice's shrill voice echoed through the estate. "Lana, dust the vases. Lana, wash the floors. Don't even breathe near my perfume collection. You might contaminate the aroma." Each command served as a reminder of Lana's place. Invisible help meant to be neither seen nor heard. The estate staff mostly ignored Lana, too. Some, like the head butler, Mr. Hendricks, were mildly polite, greeting her with a stiff nod as she crossed their path. Others, like the mansion's younger maids, regarded her with guarded sympathy. They recognized Clarice's cruelty, but feared stepping out of line. Lana sometimes exchanged hushed words with them in the laundry room or the kitchen, but conversations were cut short the moment Clarice's heels clicked ominously in the hall. One evening, while polishing the marble staircase, Lana paused at the sound of excited chatter drifting from the parlor. She heard the butler announcing the arrival of tailors, stylists, and a famous designer, all here for Clarice. Apparently, Clarice was preparing for an upcoming society event of immense importance. The Midnight Bloom Gala, a spectacle that only the city's elite attended. It was rumored to be the pinnacle of glamour. Swirling gowns, crystal champagne flutes, and influence radiating from every corner of the luxurious ballroom. Lana stared at her reflection in the polished marble floor. She had once dreamed of attending events like that, not as a guest, but as a journalist. Her ambition had been to capture stories, interview the wealthy and powerful, and use her words to shine a light on the world's hidden corners. She'd even gotten accepted to a decent journalism program. But then her mother's health had deteriorated, forcing Lana to drop out and take whatever job she could. Her student loans and her mother's medical bills consumed every spare penny. So now she was here, cleaning floors nobody thanked her for cleaning. As the stylist passed by, carrying sparkling fabrics and boxes of hairpins, Lana felt a pang of envy. She shook the feeling away, reminding herself she had no business yearning for a life so distant from her current reality. Overhearing Clarice's shrieking complaints about the color of a gown or the fit of a pair of heels felt like eavesdropping on another planet. That night, Lana was assigned to tidy the corridor near Clarice's private dressing room. She tried to be as unobtrusive as possible, praying she wouldn't earn Clarice's wrath just for existing. Suddenly, Clarice's voice rose from inside the room. "I'm not going. This year's Midnight Bloom Gala will be tedious. Let the tabloids gossip about why I missed it. I have zero interest in rubbing shoulders with pretentious snobs." Lana froze. The idea of not attending the Midnight Bloom Gala was unthinkable for someone like Clarice, who relished the limelight. But Clarice's tone was bored rather than regretful. A second later, there was a furious sound of ripping fabric. The door flew open, and Clarice stormed out, leaving a stunned tailor in her wake. Inside, half-draped on a velvet mannequin, hung the most exquisite silver gown Lana had ever seen. It shimmered with an otherworldly glow, capturing and reflecting light with a soft, enchanting gleam. The tailor sighed. "All that work for nothing," he muttered, shaking his head at the abandoned gown. As Clarice's footsteps retreated, Lana tiptoed closer to the dress. She could almost see her reflection in the delicate beading. For a few heartbeats, She imagined wearing it, stepping into a ballroom with her head held high, instead of hunching over a mop. She pictured what it would feel like to dance, to laugh, and to be seen as someone worthy of attention. She blinked, cheeks flushing with guilt at her fanciful daydream. There was no way she could even consider something so reckless. The very thought of borrowing Clarice's property without permission would be grounds for immediate dismissal, likely accompanied by a lawsuit if Clarice felt vindictive. And yet, the gown glinted under the overhead lights, tempting her with dreams of a life that seemed forever out of reach. Late that night, Lana tiptoed through silent corridors, her thoughts refusing to settle. She told herself to let the foolish notion go. She was just a janitor, destined to remain invisible to the wealthy. The dress wasn't meant for her. Yet an unfamiliar spark lit within her, the faintest ember of courage or desperation. She wasn't quite sure which. For the first time in her life, Lana felt the stirrings of a reckless determination, one that whispered, "What if?" Night blanketed the city as Lana stood in the shadowy corner of Clarice's dressing room. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared it would echo off the walls. The silver gown hung in front of her, ghost-like and alluring on its velvet mannequin. She knew exactly where Clarice and the rest of the household were, enjoying a pretentious dinner party in the grand dining hall. They wouldn't be back in these chambers for hours. "But this is madness," Lana muttered under her breath. She nearly turned away. She even took a few steps back toward the doorway. Her pulse thundered, and the rational part of her mind screamed that this was insane. If caught, she'd lose her job instantly. Her mother's next round of treatments depended on her meager income. A single misstep could destroy everything. Yet some magnetic force drew her back toward the gown. She recalled that overheard conversation. Clarice had no intention of attending the Midnight Bloom Gala. So, in Clarice's mind, the dress was rendered obsolete. Could Lana really borrow it, just for one night, and sneak it back, none the worse for wear? The plan formed in her mind with a dizzying clarity. Carefully, she undid the back zipper. Her hands trembled as she slid out of her shapeless uniform and stepped into the silver gown. The fabric felt luxurious against her skin, cool and smooth, hugging her figure more perfectly than she had dared hope. She caught a glimpse of herself in the full-length mirror. The reflection was foreign, a glamorous stranger who did not belong mopping floors. A wave of panic nearly paralyzed her. "This is impossible," she whispered. But the sight of her reflection also stirred something else. Confidence, or at least a hope of it. It was just for one evening. One night of feeling like someone whose dreams hadn't been crushed. She remembered a line from an old movie. Every Cinderella deserved her ball. Maybe just this once, she could taste the magic. Slipping quietly out of the dressing room, she found the back stairwell, the one used by staff to avoid mingling with guests. Her plan was to exit the estate unnoticed, hail a taxi, and arrive at the gala. A swirling excitement churned in her stomach, part terror, part exhilaration. As soon as she stepped outside, a crisp breeze met her, ruffling the delicate fabric. She felt suddenly alive. She was no longer simply Lana the janitor. For just a few hours, she could pretend to be someone else, someone who had a right to attend the Midnight Bloom Gala. Her footsteps were tentative at first, but they gained purpose. The city lights glistened in the distance, hinting at the grandeur that awaited. The grand ballroom of the Midnight Bloom Gala was ablaze with light. Crystal chandeliers scattered rainbows across the polished floors. Musicians perched on a raised platform, their strings and horns weaving a melodic tapestry that set hearts fluttering. Everywhere, socialites in splendid attire chatted and posed. This was a realm where fortunes were made, alliances forged, and secrets whispered behind jeweled masks. Lana tried to slip in unobtrusively, clutching her tiny purse as though it might fly away. She'd purchased a simple lace mask from a discount shop earlier that week. It concealed just enough of her face to keep her from being recognized. Or so she hoped. Eyes scanned to the moment she entered, drawn by the gown's silvery shimmer. She suddenly realized she had no idea how to actually act in these circles. Should she parade around confidently, or stand by the periphery, sipping champagne? With sweaty palms, she headed for the refreshment table. where she could at least blend with people busy admiring themselves in the reflection of towering ice sculptures. A waiter offered her a flute of sparkling champagne. She took it with trembling hand, summoning a practiced nod that she hoped looked refined. She held the flute to her lips, the bubbles tickling her nose. This was her night of make-believe, and even if it lasted only minutes before security discovered her, she intended to cherish every second. And then he saw her. From across the room, Dominic Vale paused mid-conversation. A man of broad shoulders and quiet demeanor, he was rumored to be one of the most influential young billionaires in the country, having inherited a vast empire. He was famously camera-shy, rarely attending social functions unless absolutely necessary. But tonight, he was there, and in a sea of vibrant colors and glittering jewels, his gaze locked on Lana in her silver gown. When he first approached, Lana froze. Dominic's presence felt magnetic. Under the softly glowing chandeliers, she noticed the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. He was dressed in an impeccably tailored tuxedo, exuding confidence without arrogance. She read curiosity, maybe even admiration, in his gaze. "Excuse me," Dominic said softly, his voice carrying enough warmth to quell Lana's jitters. "I couldn't help but notice you across the room. May I have the pleasure of a dance?" Lana's mouth went dry. She managed a polite nod, words failing her. Together, they stepped onto the marble dance floor. The orchestra struck up a new waltz, and Dominic guided her expertly, one hand at her waist, the other holding hers with gentle firmness. Lana's heart hammered, but she found herself relaxing into the music. As the dance carried them through graceful turns, the shimmer of the dress caught the golden light, reflecting in Dominic's eyes. In that fleeting moment, she forgot all about Clarice, the threat of discovery, and her life of cleaning floors. All she knew was the soft brush of Dominic's hand and the dreamy swirl of the waltz. One dance, she told herself. Just this dance. Dominic Vale paced the balcony of his penthouse suite, a restless energy coursing through him. The midnight skyline spread out like a sparkling tapestry, but his mind was fixed on a single, captivating memory: the woman in the silver gown. After that dance, she had slipped away as suddenly as she appeared, leaving him with questions that gnawed at him day and night. His assistant, a composed man named Elijah, stood a few feet away, tapping at a tablet. "Sir, I've gone through the guest list for the Midnight Bloom Gala twice. She doesn't appear on it." Dominic stopped pacing long enough to let out a slow breath. That makes no sense. She had an invitation. She was wearing a gown fit for that kind of event. Everyone noticed her. He remembered their dance clearly. How natural it felt to hold her. How her laughter had sounded simultaneously joyous and cautious. Elijah shrugged. "We've reviewed surveillance footage. She wasn't captured entering the main doors. She must have come in through a side entrance or service area." Dominic's jaw tightened. He prided himself on cutting through life's illusions, seeing people for who they were beneath the surface. In his world, superficial flattery and strategic alliances were currency. But that night, in the brief minutes he'd spent with the mystery woman, he'd felt something genuine. She seemed startled by her own presence there, almost as though she, too, couldn't believe she belonged. That humble uncertainty intrigued him even more. "Keep looking," Dominic ordered, his voice firm. "I need to find her." Though Elijah nodded in agreement, his expression revealed skepticism. "We've tried everything. Facial recognition, scanning social media posts from that evening. Nothing conclusive. Are you sure you remember her face correctly?" Dominic shot him a sharp look. "I remember every detail." Meanwhile, at the Edevane Estate, Lana worked harder and quieter than ever before. She dreaded each knock on the door, terrified someone would storm in and accuse her of theft. Weeks had passed since the gala, and miraculously, Clarice still had not noticed the missing gown. Lana had replaced it exactly where it stood, in pristine condition. But guilt weighed heavily on her, along with a secret thrill she couldn't banish. She replayed memories of the waltz with Dominic in her mind. That night, she had returned to the estate breathless and glowing, quickly stripping out the dress and hanging it back onto the mannequin. It was a miracle no one saw her darting through the corridors at such a late hour. The next morning, she had cleaned and polished the floors as usual, forcing herself to suppress any trace of her midnight adventure. That proved difficult when Dominic Vale himself arrived at the estate 2 weeks later. Clarice welcomed him with grandiosity, claiming she was eager to discuss a potential business partnership. Word traveled fast among the staff that the billionaire heir would be dining with Clarice. Lana's stomach turned in knots the moment she heard. She was part of the housekeeping team setting up the dining hall, placing silverware, polishing glasses, arranging fresh flowers. She prayed Dominic wouldn't recognize her. For good measure, she pinned her hair back in a tight bun and wore an older, baggy uniform. She kept her head down, hoping to be as unnoticeable as wallpaper. Dinner began with polite conversation between Clarice and Dominic, accompanied by their respective entourages. Clarice giggled at everything Dominic said, leaning in ostentatiously, as though they were dear friends. Dominic remained polite but distant, his gaze flicking about the estate with discerning curiosity. Lana could feel his presence. She forced her feet to keep moving, her head bowed, refilling water glasses and ensuring the cutlery was aligned perfectly. As she reached Dominic's place setting, her heart pounded. With trembling hands, she picked up a pitcher to pour water into his crystal glass. She kept her eyes on the tablecloth, not daring to meet his gaze. Yet something tugged at her memory. The warmth in his eyes that night, the gentle way he'd held her. She almost lost her grip on the pitcher. A single droplet of water escaped, splashing onto the tablecloth. "Careful, you clumsy thing," Clarice hissed. Her cold eyes flicked over Lana like she was an insect. Lana mumbled an apology and bowed. In that fleeting moment, Dominic glanced at her, his brow furrowed, a flicker of recognition. Lana felt the blood drain from her face. She spun away, scurrying toward the kitchen. Her heart thundered. Had he recognized her? It seemed impossible that he would connect this meek janitor to the radiant figure in the silver gown. And yet, she had seen a momentary spark in his expression, as though some memory teased at the edges of his consciousness. After dinner, Dominic walked through the estate's corridors, guided by Clarice, who was determined to show off her art collection. As they passed through the large windows overlooking the garden, Dominic paused. He saw Lana crouched by a flower bed outside, rearranging fallen petals and disposing of scattered trash. Something about the slope of her shoulders struck him. He couldn't ignore the nagging sense that she was the same woman from the Gala, somehow concealed in plain sight. Once Clarice was distracted by a phone call, Dominic slipped outside. He approached Lana quietly, stepping on the gravel path that crunched beneath his shoes. She turned, startled. In the moonlight, Dominic saw the same haunted eyes, the same delicate features that had captured him during that waltz. "You," he whispered, as though awakening from a dream. He couldn't hide the surprise and relief in his voice. "It's you." Lana's heart seemed to stop. She opened her mouth to deny everything, but no words formed. She had nowhere to run, no gown to hide behind. This was no masquerade. She was simply Lana, the janitor, and Dominic Vale stood inches away, recognition blazing in his gaze. Everything was about to change. Dominic's quiet pronouncement, "It's you," hung in the air like a soft echo against the estate walls. Lana felt a sudden chill despite the warm night breeze. A part of her wanted to disappear into the bushes. Another part wanted to unravel the knot of guilt in her chest and confess everything. She rose to her feet, fumbling for composure. Her housekeeping uniform was a far cry from the elegant silver gown. She wished she could vanish into the shadows, but Dominic's gaze pinned her in place. "I'm sorry," she stammered. "You must be mistaken." But Dominic shook his head, stepping closer. He kept his voice low, as if trying not to spook her. "I'd recognize you anywhere. The woman from the Gala, the silver gown, the mask. It was you." "Why?" He paused, searching her face. "Why are you here?" Lana turned away, her hands trembling. She couldn't bring herself to lie outright. I work here," she finally said, forcing the words out. "I'm just a janitor." He studied her for a moment, deep concern etched into his features. "Why would you sneak into the Gala? Was it Clarice's idea? Some elaborate prank?" She snorted softly, though there was no humor in it. "Trust me, Clarice would never let me near her shoes, let alone her dress." I borrowed it. I had no right. I am sorry. The apology tumbled out unbidden, a mixture of shame and regret. She cast her eyes downward. I'll pay you back if you want, or I'll accept whatever punishment you think I deserve. Dominic's expression softened. Pay me back? For what? Dancing with me? He gently placed a hand on her arm, and she jolted at the warmth of his touch. I'm not angry. I'm just confused. Lana's breathing grew uneven as she tried to explain in halting phrases. She told him about overhearing Clarice's complain about the Gala, seeing the dress abandoned, about wanting one night, just one, where she wasn't scrubbing floors or worrying about medical bills. By the time she finished, tears stung her eyes. She quickly brushed them away, embarrassed to be crying in front of him. Dominic listened without interruption, the moonlight revealing a tenderness in his gaze that stunned her. When she concluded, he took a step back, exhaling a slow breath. I understand now. You needed a moment to be free, to forget your burdens. She nodded, words failing her. For a long moment, they stood in silence. Then, from inside the mansion, Clarice's voice echoed harshly, calling Dominic back. Mr. Vale, I'd like to show you the rest of the collection. He cast a glance over his shoulder. I have to go, he said quietly, then turned back to Lana. But please stay. I have more to say, more to ask. Will you meet me here tomorrow? Around the same time? Lana's heart leapt to her throat. Could she risk it? Clarice might discover them talking. But then again, in the shadows of the garden, who would see? She found herself nodding before she fully grasped the implications. Yes, she whispered. Dominic's lips curved into a small smile. He gave her one last lingering look before heading inside, where Clarice waited to brag about her holdings and lavish lifestyles. The next day felt like a fever dream for Lana. She oscillated between dread and anticipation. She scrubbed floors in the morning, changed bed linens in the afternoon, and polished antique furniture in the evening, all under Clarice's glaring eye. Every time she heard footsteps behind her, she tensed, expecting confrontation. But Clarice said nothing. Either she was too self-absorbed to notice the tension in Lana's posture, or she found the staff gossip beneath her interest. That night, Lana slipped out to the garden once more. The crickets serenaded the quiet darkness, and the full moon glimmered on the estate's manicured lawns. Her pulse thrummed wildly when she saw a figure leaning against a statue of a marble cherub. Dominic. He straightened when he saw her, the faintest smile playing on his lips. You came. I wasn't sure if I should, she admitted, looking around to ensure no one was watching. If Clarice catches us. Dominic's expression hardened. She won't. And even if she does, I won't let her do anything to harm you. You have my word. She appreciated the sentiment, even though a billionaire's promise wouldn't stop Clarice from unleashing hell if she found out. They walked along the winding gravel path, the moonlight illuminating the blooms that dotted the garden. Slowly, tentatively, Lana opened up about her mother's illness and the crushing weight of the medical bills. Dominic listened intently, asking gentle questions that suggested genuine interest rather than pity. In return, he shared parts of his own story. He spoke of inheriting a conglomerate after his father's passing, the relentless pressure that came with being the face of a billion-dollar empire, and his weariness with superficial relationships. He told her how refreshing it was to meet someone who seemed real, who hadn't tried to impress him or manipulate him that night at the gala. Lana blushed at his frank admiration, her insecurities flaring. She feared he was giving her credit she didn't deserve, especially since she'd borrowed a dress and lied her way into the event. But Dominic's sincerity was disarming. For the first time, she felt seen, not as an invisible worker or a Cinderella figure, but as someone worthy of attention. When he offered to help with her mother's expenses, she quickly refused. I can't let you do that, she murmured, voice trembling. That's charity. He studied her, respect and understanding in his eyes. I admire your pride, Lana, but know that if you ever need help, I'll be here. The way he said her name made her shiver. It sounded intimate, precious. They talked until the moon began its slow descent. The world around them felt suspended in time, as though it was just the two of them in that secret garden. Finally, they parted ways, both silently dreading the moment they would have to pretend they were strangers again. Yet neither could ignore the truth. Their lives were already entwined, and Clarice's estate felt too small to contain the secret any longer. Clarisse Edevane was no fool. While she often seemed self-absorbed, relishing her own reflection and social status, she was adept at sniffing out betrayal within her domain. When Dominic Vale's visits to the Edevane estate became more frequent, Clarisse's suspicions were piqued. She couldn't fathom why the elusive billionaire, who once showed only polite disinterest in her collections, suddenly appeared keen to tour the premises multiple times. One evening, Clarisse wandered outside to search for Dominic, eager to flaunt her rare orchid greenhouse. Her stiletto heels clicked sharply along the path, and her annoyance grew when she didn't immediately find him. She was about to turn back when she heard quiet voices from behind a sculpted hedge. She recognized Dominic's low, warm tone, followed by the softer voice of Lana. Clarisse's eyes narrowed. Stepping closer, she glimpsed him in the moonlight, standing a little too near, talking in hushed, intimate tones. Clarisse felt her chest tighten, with a rush of fury and disbelief. The next day, she summoned Lana to her private study. The ornate room boasted mahogany paneling, gilded portraits of deceased Edevane ancestors, and a sweeping view of the manicured lawns. Lana entered nervously, shoulders tense. Clarisse sat behind an imposing desk, her manicured fingers drumming a sharp staccato on the polished wood. "You wanted to see me, Miss Edevane?" Lana asked, voice trembling slightly. Clarisse's glare was piercing. "Yes, I've noticed something odd." She paused, letting silence hang ominously. "Dominic Vale has developed a peculiar habit of showing up unannounced, and you seem to vanish whenever he's here. Care to explain?" Lana swallowed hard. She forced herself to maintain eye contact. "I wouldn't know, ma'am. Perhaps he's here on business?" Clarisse's lip curled. "Business? With you?" She spat the last word like poison. "Don't insult my intelligence. I saw you two last night." Lana's stomach lurched. She'd been careful, but apparently not careful enough. I was just doing my duties in the garden," she said weakly. An icy laugh escaped Clarisse's lips. "Your duties? What exactly do they include? Playing mistress to a billionaire?" She rose from her chair with a sudden movement that made Lana flinch. "You are my janitor. You mop floors, dust corners, and keep your head down. You are nothing to Dominic Vale. And yet, you think you can steal my guest's attention? How dare you?" Lana's cheeks burned with humiliation. "I never tried to." Clarisse slammed a folder onto the desk. Its contents spilled out. Photos. Grainy images of Lana and Dominic in the garden, leaning close in conversation. The angle suggested a stealthy approach. Someone had taken these from a distance. "Is this how you repay my generosity?" Clarisse hissed, her voice dripping with scorn. "You think you can waltz into my domain, seduce my visitor, and steal my future prospects? Because let's be clear, if Dominic Vale does any business here, it should be with me, not some lowly staff member." Lana felt a surge of anger ignite inside her, mingling with her fear. Seduce? She wanted to defend herself, to say Dominic chose to speak with her of his own volition, but the words tangled in her throat. She doubted Clarisse would care about the truth. Clarisse's glare hardened. "I want you off my estate immediately. Pack your things. You're fired." The final word landed like a punch to the gut. Lana's breath caught. Being fired meant losing all she had. The income that kept her mother's hospital bills paid. The roof over her head. She felt her world collapsing. Still, a spark of defiance flared. "You can't do this," she whispered, forcing the tremor out of her voice. "I've worked here for years." "I can and I will," Clarisse snapped. "I've already arranged for security to escort you out. Consider yourself lucky I'm not pressing charges for theft." "Oh, don't look so surprised. I know you borrowed that gown for the gala. I found a snag on the hem and recognized the faintest trace of your cheap shampoo on the fabric. Unforgivable." Tears pricked Lana's eyes. She wanted to rage, to beg, or to run, but she did none of these things. She stood there, trembling, as Clarisse's security staff entered. One of them gave Lana a pitying glance before gesturing for her to leave. Word of Lana's dismissal spread among the staff like a shockwave. Some whispered in corners, outraged by Clarice's cruelty. Others kept their heads down, grateful they weren't the ones in trouble. Within an hour, Lana found herself on the street outside the imposing gates, clutching a small box of belongings. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows, as though mocking her sudden plunge into darkness. She was still reeling when a sleek black sedan pulled up beside her. The tinted window slid down, revealing Dominic at the wheel. His face was etched with concern. "Lana, I heard about what happened." "Get in," he urged, voice taut with worry. Numbly, she opened the passenger door and sank into the seat. As they drove away, a swell of emotion surged in her chest. She stared out the window, blinking back tears. Everything she feared had come to pass. Clarice knew about the gown, the gala, the secret meetings. It was over. Dominic reached over, gently taking her hand. "We'll fix this," he said quietly, as though it were the simplest thing in the world. "I won't let Clarice do this to you." Lana wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at her. Clarice Edevane was powerful, vindictive, and relentless. Lana was just a girl who had dared to step outside her station for one night of magic. She squeezed Dominic's hand, seeking comfort in the gesture. Whatever happened next, she wouldn't face it alone. Dominic wasted no time. The following morning, he arranged a press conference in one of the city's ritziest hotels, where bold headlines were typically born. His public relations team looked apprehensive, unsure why he called them together with such urgency. Media crews lined up their cameras and microphones at the ready. Word had spread that Dominic Vale was making a personal announcement, an unusual move for a man known to avoid the spotlight. Standing backstage with Lana, Dominic squeezed her hand. "I'll speak first, then I'll bring you out, if you're ready," he murmured. Lana swallowed hard, her nerves coiling like snakes in her stomach. She wasn't accustomed to such attention. But the memory of Clarice's smug face and the way she tossed Lana aside fueled her resolve. She nodded. "I'm ready." As Dominic stepped up to the podium, flashbulbs erupted in a flurry. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice calm and steady. "I've called this conference because I have an important announcement regarding my future endeavors and a new foundation I'm launching." He paused, letting the murmurs die down. The reporters were already scribbling notes, hungry for anything that might hint at scandal or sensational headlines. "In my line of work," Dominic continued, "I meet countless people, CEOs, investors, celebrities. It's rare that I meet someone who embodies true resilience, humility, and heart." He took a breath, his gaze sweeping the crowd. "Recently, I encountered someone who reminded me of the importance of investing in real people, not just in companies or stocks." He gestured toward the side of the stage. "I'd like to introduce you to Lana Briggs." Lana stepped out, the bright lights assaulting her vision. Cameras flashed, capturing her every step. She tried to keep her posture steady, ignoring the pounding of her pulse in her ears. A collective hush fell as reporters scrambled to identify this mystery woman. She wore a simple, elegant dress, one Dominic had personally arranged for her that morning, and a determined look in her eyes. Dominic placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Lana has worked tirelessly in conditions that many of us never see, cleaning floors, polishing marble, ensuring the comfort of those far more privileged. Despite hardships, including her mother's medical bills, she's held on to her integrity. When I met her, she was braving a world that didn't recognize her worth." Lana's cheeks heated, but she kept her chin up. This moment wasn't just about vindication. It was about finally being seen. Dominic gestured for her to speak if she wished. She stepped forward, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I never asked for attention," she began quietly. "I only wanted to do my job and take care of my mother. But a single night reminded me that sometimes we need hope and a helping hand to realize our own value." She glanced at Dominic, whose warm smile encouraged her to continue. "I borrowed a dress that wasn't mine because I wanted, just once, to feel like I could belong in a different world. I know it was wrong. I know I risked everything. But out of that mistake, I found someone who believed in me." The flashes intensified as journalists fed on the romantic angle. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, but Dominic raised his hand for silence. "That's why I decided to create the Vale Briggs Foundation," he said, his voice ringing clearly. "A non-profit organization dedicated to supporting workers who are often overlooked, those in low-wage roles, battling circumstances beyond their control, who simply need resources and opportunities to rise. Lana will be my partner in running it." Stunned gasps filled the room. Lana blinked, hardly believing what she'd just heard. Dominic had hinted at helping her mother, but founding a whole organization, naming it with her surname, was more than she ever imagined. A barrage of questions followed. "Miss Briggs, how does it feel to suddenly be under the spotlight? Mr. Vale, is this about romance or philanthropy? Were you fired by Clarissa Edevane? Did that prompt this announcement?" Dominic exchanged a quick glance with Lana, who gave a small nod. She turned back to the microphones. "I was fired, yes, but I believe the real story here isn't about revenge. It's about recognizing that even people who clean your floors or serve your meals have dreams, talents, and dignity. No one should be invisible." Her voice gained confidence as she spoke, each word a reclamation of her identity. For once, Lana stood tall before the world. This time, she didn't need to borrow a gown or hide behind a mask to be acknowledged. Across town, Clarissa Edevane stared at the breaking news footage on her massive television. The camera zoomed in on Lana's calm yet passionate face beside Dominic Vale. The caption read, "Billionaire launches foundation with former Edevane janitor." Anger flared inside her, then subsided into icy dread. She lost not only Dominic's interest, but also her staff's loyalty. According to a new rumor, many of the estate workers had already begun handing in their resignations. Clarissa's tyranny no longer felt unbreakable. She hurled her teacup against the wall, porcelain shards scattering across the floor. In that moment, she realized how much damage a nobody could inflict by simply stepping into the light. When the press conference ended, Dominic and Lana were met with applause. He led her off stage, relief mingling with excitement. "I hope you're okay with the name," he said, smiling. "The Vale Briggs Foundation. It has a nice ring, don't you think?" Tears glistened in her eyes. "I don't know how to thank you." "Just be yourself," he replied softly. "That's all I want." A week later, invitations arrived for the next high-profile gala. This one a charity ball where the newly formed foundation would be unveiled. Dominic offered to buy Lana the finest gown, but she chose a simpler design that felt authentically her. She no longer needed to pretend. That evening, they walked into the shimmering ballroom together, arm in arm. Whispers followed them, but Lana held her head high, unashamed. She had stepped out of the shadows, not just for a single dance, but for a new life. The music swelled, and Dominic guided Lana onto the dance floor. They shared a smile, no masks, no lies, nothing borrowed. Just the palpable warmth of two people who had found something genuine in a world of glittering illusions. As they spun gracefully to the music, cameras flashed and onlookers gawked. But Lana felt only the steady beat of her heart. She wasn't just an accidental Cinderella or a borrowed dress. She was Lana Briggs, co-founder of a foundation that would help countless others step into their own moments of recognition. And so, beneath the chandeliers and the watchful eyes of the elite, they danced, not out of secrecy, but out of freedom. In that moment, Lana realized the greatest gift Dominic had given her wasn't a fancy dress or a spotlight. It was a chance to believe in herself and to stand at last as more than a footnote in someone else's story. The end. Enjoyed this story? We invite you to give a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing more beautiful stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your effort. See you again.